Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka on 2 weeks' notice. What are these guys going to bring to the table?
He is, without doubt, one of the most dangerous strikers on planet Earth. And he knocks people into other dimensions.
Oh! Here is the true martial artist, Jiri Prochazka.
He really is just like a samurai warrior.
The fights are going to be hot, hot, hot. Of course, we're talking about UFC 303, International Fight Week. We were supposed to get Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. We're not getting that. Let's rewind to that moment, I guess, to start off with. What we now, of course, are getting Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka. Great fight. When that fight was announced, what was your initial reaction?
Alex does it again, right?
Yeah.
Alex back to the rescue. I mean, the reality is if he didn't do what he did at UFC 300 and have the moment that he had at UFC 300, knocking out Jamal Hill, doing the meme-worthy gesture at the end, and just, he didn't save that show single-handedly. I mean, it was a great card, and Max Holloway had the performance of a lifetime, but Alex put a stamp on it enough that we can now trust him to headline any card, no matter who was supposed to be there. We can trust Alex Pereira. He can handle any card single-handedly, and now we get to we give him our stamp of approval.
Oh, 100%. The bat signal goes out, which, I mean, as things started to crumble, I mean, I'll be honest. I was like, I'm so glad I'm not actually like a full-time UFC employee right now.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Worker. I could just stay at home and kind of just wait for you guys to fix all this, and then I'll swoop in and show up and do my job. But good Lord, I can't imagine how much work they did over the last couple of weeks.
Could you imagine being Hunter and Dana or just and Mick and these guys, like having to deal with like between the manager, like it has to go to the manager, then the fighter, then the man then is going between them, and then you got to go to the other side, and then there's other. I mean, I could not imagine being on the UFC staff trying to make these fights happen.
Yeah, and it wasn't just this card. It was the card that we just saw in Saudi Arabia was having issues as well. And it was all happening at once. Anthony Smith had like 5 different opponents. Anyway, we're here, guys. And I'll be honest with you, this is not a fight I saw coming out of anywhere because Alex Pereira just fought in April. However, at the same time, that bat signal goes out and you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense that Alex Pereira would be the one to step in. And I'm now understanding that he and Jiri Prochazka were basically slated to fight each other anyway come August. So it's making more sense. And I am very excited to see this rematch. I'm really, really excited for this because I think that we're going to see even more out of these two guys.
Well, here's the thing too, is it also restores some balance into the MMA universe. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we get these guys who don't want to take fights because, you know, they're not prepared or they're just so calculated about their career. But this also lets us know that there are guys like Jiri Prochazka and Alex Pereira that are willing to step up, move their fight. I mean, they probably could have did this fight anytime and they'd been like, I'm down. It's whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm a fighter. This is what I do. So I'm glad that these guys were able to put this together. So I'm just excited that this is going to happen. And I actually think this is going to be a completely different fight. If Jiri Prochazka can avoid taking that big shot like he did in the first fight and having it stopped, I think we're looking at a completely different fight and possibly a completely different outcome.
I think I completely agree with you. I'm excited to jump into some of those details. Let me run through some of the stats and the tail of the tape before we dig into the weeds a little bit. Of course, we're talking about the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka for the second time. And I always love a rematch, especially when the first time that they fought was not all that long ago. And that is, of course, the case here. Alex Pereira 7-1 in the UFC, Jiri Prochazka 4-1, but Prochazka, of course, much more overall MMA experience. He's 34-1 overall, and of course, Alex Pereira is 10-2 overall in MMA. So a lot more overall MMA experience for Prochazka. Roughly the same size. Alex has an inch in height. Jiri has an inch in reach. But it gets pretty interesting when you get into some of the striking statistics. Alex Pereira has some of the best striking accuracy in not just in the division, but in the UFC. 62.8% striking accuracy. The UFC average, to give you some context, is 42%. The UFC record is 67.8%. So he is not horrendously far off of the record for striking accuracy in the history of the UFC. And that speaks to the tremendous amount of experience he has in kickboxing, but it also gives you some clues into the way that he approaches a fight. Both of these guys, very high volume, 5.1 strikes landed per minute, 5.75 for Jiri Prochazka. It is kind of funny. They actually have 100% takedown accuracy for Alex Pereira. He's 1 of 1. So, I mean, I say that it really means basically nothing, but it's interesting to see that there. And then 60% for Jiri Prochazka, but neither of these guys are really looking for takedowns very often. Takedown defense for Alex is 70% and Jiri 68.4%. So pretty close there. Knockdowns. Now, Alex Pereira has 4 knockdowns and has been only knocked down 1 time. Jiri has 2 knockdowns and has been knocked down 1 time. So just a couple of high-level stats there off the top. I guess to begin the discussion itself, Dean, who do you think would be most affected by the circumstances of this fight? The fact that it is so last minute, 2 weeks of preparation. Who does that affect more?
I don't think it affects either of them any more than the other. I think both of these guys are so locked into their careers and so locked into their craft that they might actually appreciate being able to get this fight done and over with now, especially on a bigger stage, because I don't know what card they were slated to fight in August, but this is probably going to be a bigger stage. I mean, they're essentially—
I think it was going to be Perth. And I the only reason I know that is from watching an interview that Jiri did today. I hadn't really heard that before.
Well, I mean, this is the substitution for Conor McGregor, so you got to expect this to be a bigger spotlight for these guys. So I think that both of them, and I don't think it's going to light a fire under them anymore, but I just think that they're so locked into their craft and they're so locked into what it is that they do best that they're just like, I don't care when it is. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next day. It could be in a parking lot. These guys are going to come and fight, and that's what I love about these guys.
And even with the broken toe situation, we don't really know the status of Alex's toe. Obviously, we know he had that injury going into 300, and the general understanding is he actually sustained either another broken toe or I guess more of a broken toe in the fight itself. Was down in Australia.
What's going on with this man's toes?
Well, I know.
He need to get a pedicure.
It is a little bit ironic that, the reason that the main event fell apart and now the reason that the main event still going on is the guy with a couple of broken toes, but neither here nor there, I suppose. I think it's a fascinating approach and tells you a lot about who both of these guys are as warriors, that on the biggest stage, underneath the brightest lights, it seems that neither of them had any hesitation, despite any injury, despite any lack of preparation time. This was a fight that they were excited to have. And I'm sure for Alex, and probably for both of them, really, having fought each other so recently probably didn't hurt, the circumstances either.
Yeah, I just can't stress it enough how much of a breath of fresh air this is, that these guys are taking this fight and doing this now, because it's also setting an example to other younger fighters that are coming up to think that in order to be a big star, you have to have this crazy character and you have to be this crazy, trash talker. But the reality is that you don't have to have that. You have to be able, and more than anything else, you have to be willing to step up and take advantage of opportunities like this. And when you can do that and have some success doing that, that says a lot more about you than the guy who lied about his character or just created some monster in order to get clicks and views. But being able to step up and take advantage of these opportunities, being good enough, having that amount of confidence in your game. You talked about the accuracy of Alex Pereira, and that speaks to his confidence, the ability to not feel like he needs to go out there and throw a million punches because he's looking for a lucky shot. He's confident in knowing that he can hit you with one shot and get the job done. So the confidence that these guys have, the composure that these guys have, that can step up on a short notice like this and give us what they're about to give us speaks volumes.
Let's talk about the first fight, because it's interesting now to look at it in the rear view mirror, and each of them have had a fight since, and we'll talk about those as well. But the first time that Alex and Jiri fought, there were a couple of really big takeaways. One of the biggest, the most obvious, is how effective Alex Pereira's calf kicks were on Jiri Prochazka. And toot, I do recall you and I pointing out that that would probably be a big factor of that fight, you know, as we were breaking that one down. So we can put that one in the told you so category.
Ooh. I got enough of them in the other category.
I know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the other side of the balance sheet looks like, but when you get one, you got to brag about it. So I'm going to brag about it. But it was a huge factor in the fight. It's not the finishing sequence, but when you go back and watch it, it sure is absolutely the lead up to the finishing sequence. So the calf kick was a huge part of the approach for Alex Pereira. However, on all three judges' scorecards, Pereira lost that first round. And it's interesting to go back and look at some of the things that Jiri was doing effectively, and that maybe he could perhaps do more of that and make fewer mistakes the second time around.
Well, that's the weird thing about fighting, is that even though Jiri might have won that first round, it didn't look like he was going to win. It just seemed as though even though he was being effective, it just didn't look like the momentum was really on his side. Almost very similar to when you go back and watch Volkanovski and Ilya Topuria. Like, Topuria won the first round, but there was just something about Ilya's demeanor that it was like, all right, just wait.
Just wait.
So just wait a minute. I got this. Don't worry. Yeah. And that was what it felt like with Jiri and Alex the first time. It was like, yeah, he won and was having some success, but you got this feeling in Alex that he wasn't panicked and was just like, just wait a minute. I got this. Don't worry about it. But I think not the stuff that Jiri was doing successfully is going to be a key, but I think the stuff that hurt him, if he can negate that, I think that's a bigger factor. If he can avoid the leg kicks and avoid that clean shot that Alex was able to land, and it's reliably able to land. Mm-hmm. If he can avoid that, I think that's the real key. And not necessarily the stuff that was working for him, but the stuff that hurt him. He's got to avoid that stuff. And then I think he has enough of a game that can make a difference in the fight itself.
Yeah, I mean, you could essentially see a path where, because early in the fight, Jiri was doing a good job of sort of picking Alex apart with kicks. None of them were overly effective. In fact, Alex Pereira's leg kick, calf kicks were way more effective, but Jiri was scoring points, but more importantly, kind of frustrating some of the rhythm of Alex. It's just that when Alex would land with the calf kicks, they were devastating. I mean, every time he landed one of those, like I went back and watched, it was 30 seconds in and you could see that they were having an effect on Jiri. And then the grappling of Jiri came in, and he was on top of Alex for the last roughly 2 minutes of that first round. Now, Alex was able to get back up, but one would think that given some amount of success in the grappling, that might be a bigger part of the approach from Jiri this time around.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Hey guys, this video is powered by Bet365 as part of their sponsorship of the UFC in the UK and Ireland. So if you're in the UK and Ireland and join Bet365, if you can use code SANKO when you sign up and let them know that I sent you, I would be super grateful.
I always overestimate the intelligence of most fighters, rather. I overestimate their intelligence. I always say, and Anthony Smith is always good about correcting me, I always say they can't be this stupid. And I think this is why I have a hard time. I'm like, fighters can't be this stupid to not be fully prepared for these moments in a fight. And you can't be that stupid to not want to incorporate some level of grappling when you're fighting Alex Pereira. You can't be that stupid. I said that Sean Strickland couldn't be that stupid. Apparently he was, and he was. Like, you just can't be that stupid. Jiri Prochazka can't be that stupid and going, you know what? Striking is the key to victory here. You have to have some level of grappling or some threat of grappling in order to get Alex Pereira out of his comfortable stance.
Yes.
You cannot allow this man to stand comfortably and just walk with it in his stand up tall, giving him access to all of his limbs. You cannot allow him to be that comfortable. And the way to do that is by grappling him.
Yeah, when Alex is able to sort of take his time and make his reads and set up his shots, because he is so defensively sound from that, like you say, that comfortable stance, when he is in the area that he wants to be in, it's going to be really difficult to beat that guy. But you see moments where he's forced outside of it. And Jiri was, I mean, there were some very scary moments in that first round where he was really putting the pressure on Alex and forcing him to not be so defensively sound. Now we know Jiri almost never is, right? That was the downfall in that first fight, is Yuri's willingness to rush forward without any guard whatsoever and try to find his own kill shot. I'm interested to see if he is capable of fighting in a way that is a little bit more defensively educated, or if that would take him too far out of his flow.
See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that you don't want to really change, I don't know, a zebra too much, right? You don't want to change the stripes of a zebra.
Then it'd just be a horse.
Then it's just a horse, right? Then you're dealing with something different. And that's why I always say, when you're studying a fighter, you got to look back at a lot of footage, and you want to look back as long as you can go. And some people go, oh, that's too far back. But if they're still doing the same things back then that they're still doing now, chances are they're still going to do them. And if they don't do them and they try to change it up too much, they're just not going to be very good at it. And the problem is if you change Jiri up too much, he's not going to be Jiri anymore. He's not going to be very good at the way he fights. And that is with that sporadic, spontaneous, just kind of a whirlwind of a style. So you want him to have that. You just want his eyes to be open a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is it, and you're dealing with a guy like Alex, you don't really want to give him the angles. You don't really want to stand too much in front of him. And you just can't take your eyes off of him. And I think maybe the Jiri is so wild sometimes he might take his eyes off the prize.
What did you make of Yuri's performance against Rakic? Because we broke down that fight beforehand, and everybody has probably heard me say at this point, I'm a huge Alexander Rakic fan. I think that he's got tremendous fundamentals, and he showed that in round one, where he was really picking Jiri apart and really frustrating him, and again attacking that same calf kick that Pereira had so much success with. But then you see Jiri just kind of like, and the commentators were pointing it out, just this energy of like, I don't care that you're hitting me more than I am hitting you. I don't care. I will find my moment, and I'm going to find a way to take you out. It seems, I don't know. It was a really interesting performance because it felt like the momentum flipped like that.
And you're right. But I'm more of a numbers guy, right? And that's the hard part about fights, is that we don't really get a lot of numbers. You can't be sustainable fighting a style like that, where you're just like, I'm going to fight fire with more fire. And that's not a sustainable fight system for MMA, because you're just taking too much punishment. It worked for that time. Like, you want to save those moments for like the times that you need them, but you can't fight a style that way. So, and unfortunately, that's kind of the style he fights. And he just doesn't always take that much punishment, but he can't fight that type of style all the time. It was fun to watch, but you don't want to do it often.
Yeah. So let's talk about, what you see as the most likely outcome this time. So neither of them has had time to like really, I find it really hard to believe that, given the fact that he didn't really have a way to address the kicks against Rakic, and now he's got just a couple of weeks. I don't know that we're going to see Jiri Prochazka be able to come out and avoid all of the calf kicks. Maybe do a better job of being more mindful of them, but I don't know how you fix that so quickly.
Well, no, another thing too is that when you've been knocked out, you also recognize that you can be knocked out, and then it's harder. How they say it's easier to get knocked out once you've been knocked out?
Yeah.
it can also be harder to knock somebody out after they've been knocked out because now they recognize they could be knocked out and they're a little bit more prepared for it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Yuri's that type of guy, though. So I think it's going to be harder to put him out this time. So when you talk about most likely scenarios, I think Yuri's going to be prepared to be like, all right, I know he knocked me out the first time, but that ain't going to happen now because I know that it can happen. And I'm not going to let that shot get through. I'm going to brace a little bit better. He may not be able to block fully, but he'll be able to brace for it a little bit better. Tuck his chin just enough to where his head doesn't whip over. So, and even with the leg kicks, he knows he could be hurt by it. Now he's going to go, I may not be able to stop him fully, but I can be off to the side a little bit more that I don't take the full blow of the kick.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I think Yuri's going to be a little bit more prepared this time, just from the little small details and angles to be able to go, I'm not going to take the full blow of what this guy's going to deliver.
I highly recommend anyone, I'm not saying you, Dean, I mean like you, viewer, go watch Yuri's interview that he did with Ariel Helwani. It's so fascinating to hear him talk. Now, obviously, English is not his first language, and you can see him sometimes struggling to find the perfect word to communicate because he has these really esoteric ideas about spirituality and the way that he approaches life and the way that he approaches fighting. And I can only imagine how difficult it would be to speak in those terms.
You imagine, yeah.
Not in your first language,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
But
I can't even do it in English. It's my first language.
But he said some really fascinating things. And he was talking again about how he does that 3-day, I don't even know what to call it, but he sits in complete darkness and doesn't eat anything and doesn't do anything except for train, which Ariel asked him, how do you train in complete darkness? And he said, he just shadow boxes. He said, once you understand what's in the room, it's not hard to know where things are. So total darkness, no food, and just water for 3 days. And the way that he described, the way that he said it, he said, you learn to become a friend to yourself. And over time, I'm going to screw this up, but it was basically like you know yourself in such a way and in such a kind way that you come out of it really understanding who you are as a consciousness, not as a person in this like flesh suit, but as a consciousness. And he said, the only opponent that I have in this fight is my own ego. That's the only opponent I ever have. And I just thought that was the most interesting way to look at things.
I mean, both of these guys are so similar in their approach. I'm sure Alex might have his kind of esoteric thoughts on his approach and his consciousness and how he's approaching it. Probably very similar to that too, because I remember when I did a Dean's Diary on him and Glover Teixeira, and they made me get into the cold plunge. He has a cold plunge set at like 32.5, just so it didn't freeze over. And yeah, and Glover's like, yeah, I do it every day. And Alex is like, yeah, I don't ever do this. And I try to get in, and as soon as my little tail hit the water, I was like, ooh! And I hopped down as fast as I could. I didn't even do it. I couldn't even do it. But Alex gets in there for like 10 minutes, his first time.
Oh my God.
He gets in there, and you could, he's in pain, but he doesn't get out. And he stays in there for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, this guy is just built different. Like, this is not something that he does or was used to or accustomed to. He just did it for the first time for like 10 minutes. And I was like, this guy is out of his mind. So these, like, when you're dealing with guys like that, they're just built different. They have a different mindset.
Yeah.
And they're just different levels of human being.
And it's another level of mental mastery, right? Sort of on the level of a David Goggins or someone that I personally can't identify with, because I'm not even close to being that. It's not even, it goes so far beyond discipline. I don't know that there's a word for it, but just the ability to control your own your own mind and emotions and feelings and thoughts and sense of pain, or is it there? Is it not there? I mean, it's wild.
Let me tell you how disciplined I am. The last time I was in Vegas and I was on a diet, I was like, yo, I'm going to be on a diet. I'm getting shape. You know what I'm saying? I got to look good because, you know what I'm saying? I'll be in front of the camera.
Uh-huh.
The very first night I was here for dinner, I had a bowl of ice cream.
I think you and I are on the same vibe, Dean. It's okay.
I can't do it. I
can't
can't do it. I don't have that level of discipline as these guys do. I can't do it.
We're building a house right now, and I so want to be an ice bath person because I look up to those people, and I see and I read about the benefits. I believe in the benefits. I think I would be a better person if I woke up every day at 6 a.m. and got in an ice bath, and then that's how I started my day. I've never done one, not even close. In fact, I hate cold water so much, but I'm putting one in my house with the hopes that just having it there will turn me into one.
I bought one 9 months ago.
And
it's still on my it's on my balcony. It's empty. I still ain't put no water in it.
We'll have to
I'm
do one
working
of
on
these.
it.
We'll have to do one of these shows where we're simultaneously podcasting from our ice baths.
Yeah, it's doing an ice bath is different. You got to be a different level of person. So I'm working on it though. I am working on it. I am trying. I am working on it.
We'll get there. We will. I'm going to do it too. You're hearing it here first. I will become an ice bath person.
I love it.
I'm going to be. All right, back to what we actually care about, which is UFC 303 main event. How do you see this one playing out, and who do you see walking away with their hand raised?
You know, I went on a show earlier this week. Actually, it was my own show, and I said that I thought that Jiri was going to upset Alex, and I still believe that. I still believe that Yuri's going to upset Alex. I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell me that Yuri's run of not having to grapple and win fights, it's got to come up sometime. It's got to come up sometime. And Jiri is such again, his ego probably didn't allow him to grapple that much in the first fight. But if he wants to be a winner, like at the end of the day, all fighters want to win. And that's part of the mastery, is the highest level of achievement, and winning is a part of that. And if he wants to be a winner, he has to grapple. And I just don't believe that Alex's grappling is at the level that it needs to be a sustainable world champion, multiple time world champion. And I think that it's going to catch up to him. And Saturday night it catches up to him.
Do you think that Jiri goes to the grappling pretty early?
No, I think, I'm not sure he goes pretty early, but I do think that he'll have his moments early, some back and forth moments. He'll get him down. It'll be close, and Alex will get back up, and it'll be really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But then it'll be one of them, I think it'll end up being like one of them Shevchenko, Alexa Grasso submissions where it's just like, oh, he got his back, and then he gets his arm under the neck and probably puts him to sleep, right?
Something in transition.
Yeah, something in transition where it's like he has his moments, but when you think it's going to happen, it doesn't happen. And then this wild transition will happen, and then he'll catch his neck and end up getting Alex. That's just what I think is going to happen.
Well, I like your take. And regardless of who walks away the winner, this is an absolutely massive fight for the division. You've got the former champion looking to get his belt back. You've got Alex Pereira looking to continue his run as champion at light heavyweight. And if he does get the better of Jiri, I mean, that's a crazy feat to be able to do that on 2 weeks' notice, to beat this guy twice. I mean, that would continue to cement Alex, I think, even higher in that pound for pound ranking. Right now, he's currently number 4 pound for pound. There would be a case to be made. There would be a case to be made. That's all I'm saying.
It would be. Especially with a finish.
Especially with the finish. It's incredible what he has been able to do. And the fact that he hasn't even been here 3 years yet is so crazy. It's crazy.
Timing is everything. It's his time. And things are lining up for this man, and he's taking full advantage of it. And opportunities like this, if it works out for him, again, it just proves my point that timing is everything.
Yep. And he's got everything it takes to be a superstar. So Dean, I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Guys, keep it locked into this channel right here. We have so many other videos for you to check out. Of course, a video on the co-main event of 303 as well. We'll see you there.